up, everyone? DJ Nubis here with you on the Middle Time Radio podcast, doing another movie review. This time, 2022 is Bliss of Evil. I was lucky enough to run into Corey Henshin. Henshin, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Henshin, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Sorry if I fucked that up, guys. Who got in touch with me because he had done an interview with That Fat Samurai guy on his channel, and so he also did a versus episode where we were talking movies and stuff. So he came to me and Facebook and asked if I'd be interested in checking out his film Bliss of Evil. So I got a special screening of that, which was really cool. Then really nice. I'm much appreciated to Lauren and Josh and Corey for that. So I'll be giving a little bit of a review of that. The movie itself, the premise is like based off true events. Initially, I thought it might be like something like one particular incident, but it looks like from what I was reading from another interview that Lauren was doing with another magazine that it seems like with Corey and her, it's something to do with like the music scene and just how band members and musicians can act sometimes. So that's kind of like where the thought process is with the premise of this film. The premise, of course, is Isla, a sound engineer, is struggling in the aftermath of a traumatic event. Meanwhile, her girlfriend, Nicole, is avoiding her own feelings of guilt by focusing on getting her grunge band signed to a major record label. One evening during the band rehearsals, the group discovered they had been locked inside a music studio with no escape. Mistrust and mayhem erupt as they search for answers and a way out, forcing Isla to face her darkest fears. Directed by Josh Morris, writers Corey Henshin as well as Josh Morris, and produced by Lauren Shaw on a budget of $15,000. So low budget indie film. I don't think they have a distribution yet, but they're looking for sure. One thing that I've noticed and also was explained to me is the cast was specifically designed to be very diverse. So it is 50% women and men. And they did a very good job with that. That stars Eliza Allen as the mother, Sharni Tones as Isla, Shanae DeMarco as Nick, who is also the singer of the band. I don't know if it's pronounced Shanae or Chanae. Aston plays Courtney, the groupie. Corey Henshin, that we've mentioned before, he's plays Bloodface. He plays the killer in this. He's also the guy that writes a lot of the portion of the music in this film, so I'll get to that a little bit later. Emily Rowbottom plays Rhea, the drummer. Michaela Shuttleworth plays Jamie, also as the stunt coordinator of the film, which is cool. Brendan R. Berman Bellinger plays Roy, the bassist. I just call him Triple B because there's a lot of B's in there. Jordan Schulte as Lee, the guitarist, a new guitarist coming in for the band. And then Wayne Bassett plays Uncle Michael. So really, the movie starts out basically where Isla's in bed. And she basically wakes up from like a night terror or some sort of bad dream. And, she's being haunted by something from her past. We kind of get this vibe early on. And so basically, once she's gotten up, she's visited by a friend, Jamie, who comes over and decides to join them on their trek to the studio to start doing the rehearsals with the band and whatnot. And of course, Nick shows up, who is Isla's girlfriend. And there's a little bit of like tension there because I guess Nick's a little bit jealous of Jamie and vice versa, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, Jamie ends up popping into the van that they're going to be traveling in, and inside the van already is Roy and Courtney. But you don't see Courtney right away, and Rhea's in the back. So Jamie's talking to Rhea. They're talking to Roy, who's in the front seat, but then all of a sudden Courtney's head pops up, and she says she can't find the camera. So Roy's like pushing her head back down to go look for the camera. And of course, the impression is that she's supposedly going down on him. That's sort of the kind of running joke until she actually comes back up with the camera. So kind of a funny moment there with Roy and company. But Uncle Mike, I kind of wish that we had seen more of him in the film because he is right. Like the guy Wayne Bassett did a really good job playing that character. It's totally hilarious. He's basically running the studio during the day, I guess. And when we first meet him, he's sitting there with this rapper, hip hop guy, and a couple of girls. And the guy's like, "Yeah, it's great. You listen to it, right? It's really good." And then, Uncle Mike's just like, "Dude, this shit's trash. Get the fuck out of here." And it's like, just becomes this big ordeal. And he's just a very feisty guy, and it's kind of fun to see. He even makes like eventually, once he kicks out the hip hop guy and he's talking to the other band, he's mentioning like the 27 Club, which is something we've seen on documentaries about some of these younger musicians in real life that have passed away at 27. Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, I think Janis Joplin was around the same age. So Roy all of a sudden has like a stress mental breakdown in a sense that he's like, well, I'm 27, and then but Mike's like, yeah, but they were talented. so that's a nice little joke that Uncle Mike throws at Roy there. There's really a couple cool moments in this, and I'm gonna get to the first one here and then the other one down the road. But when Isla goes to show Jamie around the studio, so there's gonna be like this little quick tour they're doing of the studio and the surrounding studios around, because it's one big building with like 2 or 3 studios in it. So Isla is showing Jamie around, and showing the kitchen, the bathrooms, the other studios, and then it's really nice cam work because as they come back to, because we think everyone else is still in a rehearsal space of the other room. So when they come back, she's like, well, this is like a storage room. So they open up the door, and of course there's Nick, and she's looking for something. So that was a nice little play on the camera, not realizing she had moved from the rehearsal room to that storage space. And then, of course, they run into Roy into another room. So again, more of like misdirection. People who didn't think were going to be somewhere, they're there. So I really like the use of the camera there and how they played that off. So Lee is the new guitarist. So the band themselves, their previous guitarist had apparently died. So Lee, he's there now, taking over, and he's kind of like a little bit arrogant, and he was checking out Jamie walking in, the studio initially. And Isla kind of has like a bad vibe about Lee. She doesn't really like his vibe that he's giving, but she's going to be engineering the music that they're doing and rehearsing, and she's fine with it for the time being. But there's this bit of an awkward moment where Lee comes into the kitchen where Jamie is, because Jamie's getting coffee for Isla. And they're kind of flirting with each other a little bit because Jamie's like that. She thinks he's kind of cute, but there comes a moment where he's coming onto her pretty fast, and so like they get interrupted before any kind of kiss can happen. So, but it kind of left me wondering, like, wow, that's a pretty strong attempt to have a come on with this girl. So I thought maybe that was we're not going to hear more of that because which I thought was an awkward scene, just because it seemed a little bit rushed, but it makes more sense later when I get to that. But there is this sense of like him kind of crossing boundaries already with Jamie, and so there's this uneasiness about it. Let's see my notes here. Now, as they're playing music and rehearsing, they become across a song called "Bliss of Evil," and apparently Isla and the former guitarist, something happened in the past with them to where when they start playing the song, she becomes very she has a very visceral reaction to it and uneasiness, and she starts getting hyperventilating a little bit and a little bit crying there. It's a bit traumatic for her to even hear it, so they have to kind of stop, and Jamie and Nick are going to see if she's okay, and she's kind of having a meltdown basically over this song, and they decide they're just not going to play it. But then the movie shifts again as we find Jamie and Lee in the kitchen, and this is while Isla and the other girls are trying to handle Isla and her meltdown, uh, Jamie and Lee are in the kitchen, and finally he kind of crosses that boundary. You know, she's busy trying to cope with the fact that her friend is not handling the music and what's going on, what happened in the past very well, and she's still blaming Isla's girlfriend Nick for allowing that to happen because both guitarists are Nick's choice of guitarists because they're pretty good at what they do, and she really wants to succeed as a band. So she does have some guilt about what happened with the other guitarist, but we don't know what that is yet. But Jamie, she's kind of like not really wanting to deal with Lee's stuff, but then Lee all of a sudden grabs her and kisses her. And again, we're shooshed away to another scene. So uh, at this point, when Nicole finally comes back in, or Nick, as her name is, comes into the kitchen, she's looking for Lee and Jamie because they want to continue because Lee's got to be there to play the music. So as she goes looking for them, first time she finds Rhea and Courtney making out in one of the other rehearsal spaces. So she's telling them, come on, quit messing around. We got to do this because Rhea's the drummer. So she's trying to get everybody back on the same page. So she's going to look for Lee and Jamie. And when she gets to the kitchen, she sees that Jamie's on the floor. She has like a guitar string around her neck, and that's blood. And Lee's kind of just sitting over her. He's kind of whimpering and crying and whatnot. So now here comes the thing where he's already proclaiming he didn't do it, and he grabs a knife, and he doesn't know if Nick is the one that did it. He doesn't trust anybody, and she doesn't trust him. The rest of the group finally comes up, and they're just like a little bit of a struggle. They manage to get a hold of Lee and tape him up, but then there's just like big mistrust about whether or not he killed Jamie. And of course, Isla sees it, and she's upset and pissed off at Lee because she automatically thinks that he did it. She never trusted him, and it's a big thing about Nick and her choices and the band and their mistrust of her decision making with this. That they tie him up or tape him up, and they're trying to process everything. But Nick is the only one who's actually level headed. She's like, we need to call the cops. We can't have people like stabbing and killing Lee here because it's not going to solve anything. We don't even know if he really did it because no one saw him do it. And then of course Courtney, she's sitting there saying similar things like, yeah, why he would do that now when we're all here and we would know that he was the one. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And Roy's like, well, killers don't make sense, and that's true too, to a degree. Not long after the rest of the group realizes that they're locked in the studio and the phone lines are down, they try to piece together what's going on. So the moment that they try to go to call the cops, the phones are down, and then they find out that the gates are locked to the studio, so they're all locked in. And so what then happens then, we automatically get thrown to a flashback scene earlier in the night when Uncle Mike left. This is when Isla actually walked him out before he left for the day, and she was taking over. And we notice that there's a stranger or a figure watching him at the entrance of the studio. And then as Uncle Mike makes his way back to his vehicle, the camera's panning around, point of view. And we see that this assailant attacks Mike and basically beats him to death. And then he makes his way back into the studio. And now we're starting to pick up the pieces of where we catch up with what happened earlier. So he's chaining the gates together. He finds the guitar string, and he sees the moment. This is where it comes back to what I was talking about earlier about the awkwardness of Jamie and Lee's, flirting or whatever. Because then we see when he kisses her the second time, she actually pushes him away and slaps him. and she's very angry about it. So clearly he was crossing boundaries, and that's kind of like what I was trying to assume was happening early, but just never panned out that way. So they were very clever with misdirection there again with that. But it does come to fruition because now we see it from the killer's point of view of what happened at that point. So Lee goes and smokes a cigarette, and then the killer ends up killing Jamie there in the kitchen. And of course, the rest you've already heard about how they came about that. So from here on out, though, from the film, it's really a matter of elimination and the continued guessing game about who the killer is and why. So you get a little bit of throat slitting and you get a little bit of a death by guitar. So some cool shit going on with that. Um, the killer eventually, though, and this is, and I kind of elaborate more later on this, but the killer eventually, because what they did was Roy had basically thrown Lee and the other girls into the rehearsal space and told them to barricade themselves in. He was going to try to hold off the killer while they do the, stay safe. So obviously, Roy, he doesn't make it. So that's the only spoilers I'm going to give you with that. Uh, but the killer eventually starts jumping on the acoustic guitar, singing the song "Bliss of Evil" over the intercom that's heard in the rehearsal space. So now the girls are like, well, you should say at least it's Isla and Rhea. They recognize the voice in the song, and so now it's like, oh shit, is this guy not really dead? Because this is the other guitarist. This was his song. This is what triggered this moment earlier for Isla, and there's some rough stuff that goes on, as far as more deaths and stuff like that. But another moment, like much like the camera I was talking about earlier about how they were going from different rooms to rooms and then catching up with other members. There's a sweet flashback moment with the guitarist, the killer, where his mother is singing to him the same song, "Bliss of Evil," and it's just beautifully shot. It's got like this kind of psychedelic vibe about it, as well as the song it's not an acoustic now; it's more of a little bit electronic, but it's more haunting. And I play that song in our rock block any day of the week. It's really a good tune. So I really liked that part. That was a nice shot, beautifully done. Because the movie is still very new and just it hasn't been out very long, I'm not going to give too much away anymore on this film than I already have. I will say the ending is interesting because uh, there's a moment where it's quite eerie with Isla recalling a childhood memory. So I'm not gonna say what it is, but it's a very interesting point of the movie, and I thought that was a nice touch. What they've added there with that. Um, I would have liked in this film if it would I would have been interested if it had a bigger budget, like what more could have been done with the character development because I thought the characters were all good and I liked them and they were well acted. Uh, maybe another half hour would have like gave you a little more meat to the characters. Uh, and I would have liked also that if they hadn't like shown the killer right away, like we do see his face. We don't really know who he is, but we do see his face, and so the mystery is kind of gone at that point. Because before they were kind of like looking at each other, and that's sort of like the cat and mouse things you usually see in films like this, is where there's a lot of misdirection, which this film already kind of does that with certain things. So it would have been nice to kind of play on that a little more, where the mistrust is a big part of that. But it's not a big deal. It's a little rough around the edges there a little bit. But it's kind of to be expected with this kind of movie and the budget they had to work with. Yeah, so really, just if they would have kept the identity of the killer uh, a little bit longer, it probably would have been a little bit better for me in that respect. As I mentioned, Corey was the guy playing acting as the Bloodface is the name of the killer, and he's also the one that wrote the music for the movie. Now I know there's some other tracks in there, so I don't know if he did all of them, but as far as Bliss of Evil, that is his track, and I'm trying to figure out. I've tried connecting with them on Facebook about the other remix version of them, whether or not that was them as well, because it was female vocals on that one. So that's the one I really liked. Um, yeah, so the noob's rating for this is an 8.5 out of 10, which is like a B plus. So I did really, really enjoy this film. I thought it was really good. Uh, it kept me engaged as a viewer. It was a lot of fun. I really like the characters. Like I said, the only drawback is you didn't have a little bit longer to kind of focus more on them before the mayhem starts. But you only got so much time and money to do that, so it's no fault of anyone. It's just how it is. So maybe you get, a sequel of some kind. Who knows? Or maybe a prequel. Prequel would be kind of cool. Yeah. This movie, from what I was told by Lauren, is going to be going to festivals worldwide. So you'll see it at Fright Nights in Austria, Cinexcess in the UK. I guess it's going to be alongside films by Ty West and Peter Strickland. Spooky Empire Film Festival in America, which is essentially the Comic-Con of horror for us. So you'll see it debuting at different independent, and it's been highly touted lately. You see the little things on the poster that people are talking about it, and it's a little bit of buzz, so that's good. You can also catch Josh, Corey, and Michaela on Fat Samurai Guy's channel from an interview you did on October 9th for the film, and it's a really, really good interview. They're all very cool people, very humble and very nice. And yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was pretty fucking good, and I appreciate Lauren and Corey and the rest of them for allowing me to view and screen this for them and give my review and thoughts on it. So many thanks. I appreciate it a lot. I hope the film does really well. If it comes out on DVD, definitely gonna get it. Thank you very much. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hopefully it's helpful. Get out there and see it when it comes released and check it out. Take care.